Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome on this bright, sunny Sunday morning. We're we're back with another episode of Open Up, and I'm your host, RJ Horner. Today, we've got a very special guest. He's a he's an accredited peace officer with the United Nations. They call him the King of Inspiration. Steve Kerr, aka Powerfull Steve, is a gifted storyteller and the author of 7 books and a Guinness Book Award winning participant. He's a spiritual leader and director of development at Canadian Black Chamber of Commerce and sits on the board of Brampton Hall of Fame. He's the founder of BDLA, which is Barja Destiny Leaders Academy. Thank you, Steve, for joining us. Let me just get into the links first. So please follow us at, hopefully today you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, and we are Voice of Men 360. I want to stay at the top of the show. First of all, we support International Men's Day, and we thank them for the mission they gave us in supporting men's issues. And also, we have an art competition here, and the original deadline was today. We have extended that deadline to allow for more participants. So please get your art into us. We want you to represent your art or represent International Men's Day through your art. And you can send your submissions, whether it be photography, drawings, some performance art, or some writing. Get those into us at info@voiceofmen360.org. And that's our announcements for today. But I thank again Steve Kerr for joining us this morning. Steve, are you there?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for having me, RJ and Sivam. It is a pleasure and an honor to be working with you all once again. I did get the opportunity to connect with the organization, the International Men's Day, and I congratulate you all for this platform, Voice of Men 360. And I love your logo, by the way. It's amazing.
Thank you, Steve. You know what? We're a brand new, well, not brand new, but we are a growing organization, and we're about to reach 1,000 members, and we're hoping to do that before the end of, before the end of this year. We're that close. That's how growing we are, and you have been a part of that, and you were a celebrant in our week-long celebration, and I remember you from that, and I just wanted to say thank you for being a part of that, and I love, and I'll get into it again very briefly so you can tell us about it right off the top of the show, your term called hugology. Please tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, hugology came about, I guess you could say the birth of it was 2014. I mentioned that I live in the city of Brampton, and I'm heavily involved in the political arena. And so for the first time in my life, I saw the need to put my name in the hat as a candidate. And so I ran for candidacy in wards 2 and 6 in the city of Brampton. And as I was knocking on some doors to garner some votes, I met this gentleman, and I come to learn that he was a doctor. And as I reached my hand out to shake his hand, he grabbed my hand, he pulled me in close, and he hugged me. And I was kind of shocked, but also surprised. I smiled and I said, wow, that's an interesting salutation for meeting somebody for the first time. And that's when I was learning that he's a doctor. And then he said that there are healing properties in a hug. And I thought he was going to stop there. But then he said 4 hugs a day for survival, 8 hugs a day for maintenance, and 12 hugs a day for growth. And so from that day, I declared that I was going to try to hug 12 people because I want to grow every day. That makes a lot of sense, right? And then through the process of time, I started to do this a lot. And then my friends now know that I'm a hugger. So now they would hug me before I even get to hugging them, because they knew I'm coming and I'm going to hug them anyways. And so people started kind of calling me Dr. Hugs, right? But there's so much branding going on. I'm saying, oh, I'm the king of inspiration. I'm the flying pastor, and there's so much brands. Like, I don't really talk about that. But as I was talking to another friend of mine, Dr. Pravin, who is the celebrity guru, and I said to him, 12 hugs for growth, and then he said 16 hugs to transcend. And I thought about it and I go, wow, that sounds powerful. I'm going to add that, right? And then I was speaking to my spiritual mother just this year, actually. And I said to her, 16 hugs to transcend. And then she said, 20 hugs for supernatural occurrences. And so now the hugology has grown from 4 hugs, 8 hugs, 12 hugs, 16 hugs to now 20 hugs for supernatural occurrences. So I tell people that even though in this day and age we're not hugging anymore, maybe because coronavirus and COVID-19 and social distancing and all that, but I always tell people that, look, when you make the gesture to somebody of a hug, because of the person and because they're thinking about it, it still can release the same kind of healing properties, even if you did not physically hug them. Because let's keep it real now. How much people are you going to have in your space physically? But there is 7.5 billion people in the world, and essentially we are in social media right now, and you can reach out to hundreds and thousands of people by putting out a video. You could have a heart-shaped thing with a hug on it and send it out and challenge your friend to send it out to 20 other people. Because what I'm really talking about is, since COVID-19, the suicide rate has gone up 4 times. 4 times. And hear this now. This is significant to this movement of Voice of Men. If you didn't know this now. The suicide rate, the ratio between male and female, every 4 people that commit suicide, 3 of them are men. So 75% of suicide victims are men. So here is the connection. Just take the time and send a hug out to somebody and challenge your friend that you send the hug out to. I'm about to put together something physical that now people don't really want hugs on the street and stuff like that. But if you hand them something, they might come within that 6 feet to receive what you're handing them. And then so have that symbol, have something that's representing that you're sending them a hug, and you will see that they will smile. Some of them might even say, hey, you can give me a physical hug. What I'm trying to say is, by doing this, I strongly do believe that it will save some people from taking their lives, because this season of COVID-19 and the word isolation and mask and all this stuff, it has really caused your healing energy to be low.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love that principle. So I'm glad we brought it out at the beginning of the show. I truly believe it's a powerful, powerful influence. So a virtual hug here, for you. I'm certainly going to implement that and try and hug some people through social media today. So thank you for that. But we are talking about opening up and telling your story, so that people might benefit for that. So let's go back to your childhood and maybe talk about your childhood, some of the influences or instances you had that led you further to your growth.
Yes. I was born in Montego Bay, Jamaica, and I came to Canada at the age of 6. My earliest memory is I could remember when I was 4 years old, and I was, just being a boy climbing a tree, and I was like 30, 40 feet up in the air. My mother comes out of the house, starts screaming at me. She's all scared because, I'm this little tiny 4-year old individual trying to figure out why my mom is screaming at me. And I'm saying, I'm just climbing a tree, mom. And I was a real social butterfly. I had a lot of friends. And so at the age of 6, I was uprooted. I was, I say that word uprooted and brought to the shores of Canada. I experienced a breath of cold air for the first time. I came to Canada in the month of March. And so it was the closing out of winter, and it was a cold day. I can't forget that day because I use the terminology now. I didn't say this when I was 6, but it was the first time I experienced the air biting you. That's the best way I can describe winter. The air bites you. And so there I was, I was a social butterfly, and I was excited to go to school because I love school. And when I went to school, I had problems getting some friends, and I didn't understand it. I'm sharing the story with you now with the knowledge of, but at the age of 6, I didn't know why the kids wouldn't play with me. And I learned afterwards was because of the color of my skin. And so I went through some crisis. And what I mean by that is because I was a social butterfly, and because I wanted some friends, I found myself praying to God, asking God to make me white because I wanted some friends. And it was very hard for me. The N word and a whole lot of other words. When the movie Roots came out, Spear Chucker and Kunta Kente and Toby, and it was just. It was just a terrible experience growing up, and so those were my early days of shaping growing up. And so I find myself not trusting the Caucasian because I didn't have any good experience coming from that. But as I got to grade 3 or 4, I'm trying to remember now, I believe it was grade 3, Mr. Nichols, and he saw, the challenges in which I was having. And just to let you know, this teacher was white. Mr. Nichols was white, and he drew me in and said he wanted to teach me some things. And I was also having troubles trusting him because, like I said, I didn't trust anybody that was white. And so he taught me this poem. I'm going to say it to you here. This what began my career as an inspirational speaker. I didn't know it then, but I know it now. And he taught me this poem called Jonathan Bing. And after I learned it well, he then said that I was going to go in front of the class and share it with my classmates. And not these words, but I said to him, hell no. I wasn't interested at all, but he motivated me enough to say, you need to do this. And so I did. And here is the first speech I ever gave. And I was at the age of 8. When Jonathan Bing was young, they say, he slipped to school, then he ran away. He sat in the meadow and twiddled his thumbs and never learned spelling, grammar, or sums. So now when you tell him add 1 to 2, explain what you mean, he will answer you. Do you mean tomorrow, or that's too bad? And what sort of 1 do you want me to add? For there was 1 before the race was through, for he ran too fast for the rest to run. But if 2 had 1 when the race was through, I'll say your answer was 1 by 2. Oh, Jonathan Bing, you haven't the trick of doing sums and arithmetic. Oh, give me a chance, just 1 more try, said Jonathan Bing with a tear in his eye. Very well, Jonathan, try once more. I want you to count up to 174. 174, said he. Well, that's a great age for a person to be. There you have it. That was my first speech. And by the way, I got some friends. I managed to break out of my recluseness and my introvert, became an extrovert, and now I am Powerfull Steve, the king of inspiration.
Oh, I love that poem. It really brings home the need or the necessity for growth, for developing and becoming yourself. So thank you for that. So it really helped you come out of your shell. And then let's move a little further. And what would high school have been like? I mean, you seem to have overcome the race issue that at that point, you've developed some friends. Let's talk about your high school, college, that stage of life at this point.
Yeah, but high school was a challenging time for me because then I became a social butterfly to the max. Let's say 360 to the 360, because I was so into wanting to be the most popular person in the school. I actually was not doing my school work. I got a rude awakening when I saw my grade in grade 9, my English class to be exact. It said 20%. And Mr. Rook, my English teacher, he basically said, I only got 20 because the school system wouldn't allow him to write less than that. So what he's telling me is the percentage I got was less than 20%. And it was a shock to me. It was a shock to my brothers and sisters. It was a shock to my parent. And I buckled down. I basically said, you know what? I got to pull back a little bit on wanting to be Mr. Popular and buckle down and start studying and so forth. And I did so. I started to apply myself. And, you know, I pulled up my grade second term from that 20% to 60%. And then I pulled it up to 84% at the end of the year. And so, as you can see, I wasn't applying myself. And that's a segue to say to each and every one of you, whatever you do, apply it, and you will achieve what you do want to achieve, because you release what's called the law of cause and effect. Every person got to understand right now, this whole entire universe, it is governed by laws. You have the law of centrifugal force, the law of increase, the law of gravity, etc., etc. And so the law of cause and effect simply states this: if you want a certain effect, if you do a specific cause, you will get a certain effect. So a lot of people, when they see things in their life not going the way they wanted to go, they spend too much time complaining about the result, not realizing that the result is because of the cause. So I say to all your listeners right now, if you do not like the results that you're having in your life, all you got to do is to change the cause, and by default, you will get a different effect. That is the law of cause and effect. And so I graduated high school. I went to university. I actually went to Christian Seminary, Tyndale University, and I am now an acting pastor in the city of Brampton.
Wonderful. No, thank you for that little bit of guidance from people for people, because we are about opening up and growing and developing. And listen, at that stage of life, we're bound to make mistakes.
Yes.
But if we take the effort and just put ourselves out there, regardless of what may be coming along, we put ourselves out there, we'll take those steps and we will grow, you know, to become a pastor or an ambassador or a representative of some other organization. So we love that. Thank you very much. And then we're all about male relationships here and male influences. So can you just talk about maybe your relationship between you and your father, you know, growing up? What was that like?
Yes, I'm actually glad that you went here, RJ, because the relationship with my father actually made me into the person in which I am now. And the story doesn't start out that well, but the ending is. I am happy to say that I was raised by my mother and my father, and I feel for those who actually don't know who their father is or have not experienced their father. But my father was a very hard and stern man. Matter of fact, he was the number one disciplinary, and my father didn't really know how to express the emotion of love. I come to learn now that he too didn't really grow up with that. But you know, to a young child growing up, you don't care about that. You just want to experience that love. And so, what I'm saying to you is, my father has never said to me, "I love you," and I needed to hear those words, and it had a great negative effect on me. Matter of fact, I was passionate about cars and so forth, and my dad was actually a class A mechanic. That's what he done for a living, and I wanted to learn about cars, but because I started to hate my dad, I just told myself I'm going to hate everything that he's about. And so I shut down my love and passion for cars and stuff like that. I do have a collection though of die-cast cars that I have in my house here, but I shut down that love. And then my dad would say to me, when you think you're too big for the rules for this house, there's the door. And he would point at the front door. And my dad said that over and over to me. And I graduated high school in 1982 June, and I found myself staring at the door one day, and just something inside of me saying I'm leaving. And I left. I just grabbed some clothes and I walked out. I didn't say goodbye to anybody. I didn't tell anybody I was leaving. And, you know, 2, 3 months afterwards, I told my mom that I'm not coming back. And it was very hard. I found myself living with my friends and being bounced around because, you know, I'd overstay my welcome here and overstay my welcome there. And it got to a place in my life where I was renting a closet. That was my room. I literally was paying rent for a walk-in closet. Yes, and I can't say I was really homeless in the sense that I didn't sleep on the street, but yes, I was living in a closet. All my clothes was there. I had sex with my girlfriend there. I watched TV there. That was my little space that I was paying rent. And so as I started to get older, and because of my pride, I didn't want to humble myself and go back home. And so I started to deal drugs on the city of Brampton, and that became my source of income. You know, I love women, and I was, you know, a player. And so I realized that if I get more money, I can get more women. And that was one of the reasons why I became a drug dealer. And back at the age of 23, there was a situation, without getting into the details, the story is kind of long. I faced death back in 23. These two guys was going to stab me, and all I can think about is this geographic location in which I was at. This is the last place I'm going to see on the earth. And I cried out. I was raised in a Christian home, and my mother and my father, you know, told me to go to church and so forth. And here I am now at the age of 23. I'm been on the street, and you know, from 18 to 23, those are my darkest years. And so I find myself crying out for God, because my parents told me that there is a God, and I needed to be saved out of that particular situation. And so I got out of the situation, and how I got out of the situation, I consider it to be a miracle. And so here I am now sitting on the edge of my bed, and I was actually holding this book here, and this is the Holy Bible. And I started to talk, and I said, you know what, all my life my parents told me about this book and told me that God is real, and I myself didn't know, but they told me. And because of I was delivered from death, I then said to God, all right, here's the deal. I'm going to pick up this book and I'm going to start reading it. And everything that this book tells me that I should stop, I'm going to stop. And everything this book tells me to start, I'm going to start it. And I'm giving you 30 days. I'm giving you a month to reveal yourself to me. And so I did. I started to pick up this book. I was a reader. Like I tell you, I love school. I had a library of Stephen King novels. I fascinated with being a sorcerer, a male witch, which is a warlock. And so I was a reader. And so I stopped reading all those books, and I started to read the Holy Bible. And it told me about going to church, and it told me about fasting and praying, and it told me about, fellowshipping with one another. And I started to do all these things. And one day when I was fasting, I went to school to learn this terminology. It's called a theophany. And a theophany is a temporary manifestation of God. And what really happened to me was I fell into a trance-like state. I was awake. This didn't happen at night. It was in the middle of the day. I fell into this trance, and in the trance, an image came before me. It wasn't an image that showed features as clear as this, but it was in the form of a body that I can see. It had 2 arms, 2 legs, and so forth. And I could remember seeing the eyes. It was like a flames. And then the image spoke to me and said, yes, I am real, and continue in this way. And so now I have a testimony that God is real. I know he is real. I have accepted his son as my personal savior. And so tying that now to the story that I was telling you about my father is when I got into the church, I realized that my heart was so filled with a lot of unforgiveness to, even though I had friends that were white and so forth, I still didn't really trust Caucasians 100%. And I hated my dad. And so the Lord was speaking to me one day, and he was asking me, what's wrong with you? And I start telling him about things that were wrong and so forth. And so he asked me about parenting, right? I'm talking about the Holy Spirit asked me about parenting and said, how are you going to be? What are you going to do? And I start, when I have my kids, I'm going to take them to the park, and I'm going to take them to the ball game, and I'm going to sit them down, and I'm going to help them study their schoolwork and so forth. And then the Holy Spirit said to me, where did you learn all those things from? And then I said, because my dad didn't. And I froze right in the middle of my speech. And I said, oh my God, my father taught me everything I know about parenting. And for the first time in my life, I shed a tear. I shed a tear for my father. And then I said to myself, I got to get into a relationship with my father. At this point, I'm 25 years old. And so I knew where my dad worked. I went to his workplace and I started to talk to him and so forth. And through the conversation, he told me about this fishing trip that he and his co-workers go on every year, and it's actually a contest, and it's a $25 you put in and you can win all sorts of prizes. And so I said to my dad, you know what, I like to go on this trip with you. And it didn't seem like he was taking me serious. And so, I left his workplace, and on my way home, my cell phone rang, and it was my dad. And he said, were you serious? Did you want to go on this fishing trip? And I said, actually, yes, I was serious, and I'd like to go on this fishing trip. And he said, okay. And, he said, send me the $25 and I would enter you. And I did so. And we went on the fishing trip, and I spent 3 days on the lake with my dad. It's a weekend trip, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And we started to bond, and I'm 25 years old. And I said to myself that, you know what? My dad has never told me that he loved me. And so I'm going to tell him, I'm going to say those words to him. And I said, you know what? I'm going to say it the next fishing trip. I'm going to say it to him. And so the next fishing trip came, and there we are on the lake Friday. And I'm trying to muster up the courage to say those words. And I couldn't. My tongue just couldn't say the words. And Sunday came and the fishing trip is over, and we're back in Toronto and back in Brampton. And I said, okay, next year I'm going to tell him. And I'm here to tell you that this went on for 9 years. 9 years. I keep saying, next fishing trip, I will tell my dad I love him. And the next fishing trip came and the same thing. But something happened differently on the 10th year. A friend of mine, father died. Now, I didn't have a relationship with his father, but because of my relationship with him, he asked me to come to the viewing to lend support to him. And so I did so. And he said he wants to go up and to see his dad's body for the first time. So I went up with him and I'm standing beside him. And then I saw the face of my dad. I'm closing. When I saw the face of my dad, my body became very cold. And I said, I can't allow my dad to die and I not share this with him. And so I told myself the next fishing trip, I'm going to tell my dad. And when that trip came, I did tell my dad how much I love him. And I hugged him and my dad began to cry. Yes, my dad began to cry. I experienced that for the first time. I was 35 years old, and that's the day I say I became a man, and my heart for forgiveness for my dad was healed, and my unforgiveness towards Caucasian was healed, and I have to give honor and thanks to my Heavenly Father for that. That is my story. Thank you.
Wow, you know what? And I see why they call you Powerfull Steve. You know what? I even just watched a video about Will Smith and how, listen, here's a guy who was on top of the world, but he created his entire persona of how to be as a father based on how he saw his father, and then trying to do the opposite and creating that opposite. But
Right.
You're right, his father taught him how to behave as a man.
Yes.
So those influences, whether we may think them as positive or negative, they're still influences in our lives. So thank you so much. I think you've given so much guidance. There's so much more we could probably talk about. I do want to ask you one more question, and then hopefully we'll end it. But tell me, other than your duties, how maybe you've influenced, our youth or young adults to become men.
Well, I'm glad that you said that too, because especially in the African Canadian community, a lot of them are going through, the judicial process and incarceration and so forth. And so with my giftings and so forth, two things was birthed, two things I call it at the different ends of the spectrum. And so I'm a track and field coach. I've been a coach for 17 years now. And I can't begin to tell you over those 17 years how many young men that I have mentored to get scholarships to America. And 4 of them actually got the opportunity to represent Canada at the 2016 Olympic Games. My son, he is actually the number 1 long jumper in Canada, and he qualified to represent Canada at the 2020 Olympic Games, but COVID-19 had something to say about that, and he is still with the Canadian Olympic team, just waiting for the next Olympics to happen. But from the other spectrum, for the last 30 years, I have been going into the prisons in Maplehurst, in Milton, OCI, that's Ontario Correctional Institution right here in Brampton, the Roy McMurtry Youth Center, and minister and coach. So it's not all about minister, it's just being their friend, just lending an ear, just being a mentor. And so that's my addition to help somebody get back on track, is to be able to meet them right where they are. They're serving time. It is an honor to have somebody come in and visit them and to just share some life experiences with them. And you just hope that when they come out, They will put down the gun. I am dealing with members that are part of gangs. They will put down the drugs. I will share my experiences on the streets, being that and so forth, and help them. And then, of course, dealing with the other spectrum of being a coach, you want to be able to work with young men and keep them on that positive track so they won't say yes to the gangs when the gangs come in. They won't say yes to carrying a gun, etc., etc.
Powerful Steve Kerr. What can I say? He's given us some amazing guidance today. There's been just some bombs that he's laid for us today. So, Steve, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us and opening up today.
Thank you very much, Sivam, and thank you very much, RJ, for having me on this platform. It is an honor, and anytime you need me, just call on me. This movement of international men's, like I said, the suicide rate among men is 75% for all suicides. Remember, hug somebody. Say to somebody how much you appreciate them. Go out of your way. It doesn't take a lot of time for you. You could sit down right now and say, okay, I'm going to come up with 20 people and just send them. You know what I do? I would text and I would say, I'm sending you 20 hugs. And if they're curious why 20 hugs, I'll tell them 20 hugs because I want supernatural occurrences to happen in your life. 16 hugs to transcend, 12 hugs for growth. Just send them a cyber hug and just believe that the work is being done, that you will be a part of the healing of a nation. I'm Powerfull Steve, the King of Inspiration. I want to thank you all for tuning in. And I close by saying, aim high, spread wings, fly.
Thank you for that. And I hope you become more active in our community. We've got a lot of great work here to do. Please, if you could, post that hugology terms in our Facebook group or our Facebook page. You can find us at facebook.com/groups/Voice of Men 360. So please, if you can post that there, I'd love to have it. And I'm sure that would be valuable for other people. That's our show today.
Say it again, Facebook.
Sorry, facebook.com/groups/Voice of Men 360.
Okay, I got it.
Thank you for that. So we are Voice of Men 360. We are representatives of International Men's Day, and we are a voice of men, as our name suggests. You can find us, as I mentioned, on Facebook through Voice of Men 360, our YouTube channel of the same name, Voice of Men 360. Our website is voiceofmen360.org, O-R-G. And please email us. In fact, we have an art competition going on that we want to remind you. Our deadline has been extended to January 25th. We want everybody to have the opportunity to get in on this art competition, representing International Men's Day through their art, whether that be photography, drawings, perhaps a performance art, or some kind of writing or short stories. So please get your art in. You can email us at info@voiceofmen360.org. Thank you for joining us today. I'm RJ Horner, your host, and please become active in our community. Please share these messages, and please help us reach 1,000 members before the end of 2020. I'm RJ Horner. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, better days ahead.
God bless.